Portions of America First are brought to you in part by Salem Now and Church People.
As well as the great Mike Lindell. Yes, he's got a new movie. Check it out, church people, at salemnow.com. And while you're getting ready to stream it, go to mypillow.com. Support this great American patriot, this truth teller. 25 corporations are trying to destroy Mike Lindell because he loves this country. They're boycotting his MyPillow products. You can go straight to his website. Use my name and Mike will give you more than 60% off more than 100 incredible products. The latest is lambskin slippers. Superb! Call them today, 800-829-8468. Send the cancel culture fascistic left a message. Support Mike today. That's 800-829-8468. MyPillow.com, promo code GORKA. Okay, so is there a crisis? Isn't there a crisis? What's the difference between a situation and a crisis? Let's listen to a man who always has something to say when he sees a TV camera. He's Senator Chris Murphy on the situation on the border. Cut 7. Play cuts.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to get sort of the facts level set here. The Washington Post did a really interesting analysis of the data last night. The conclusion they came to was that, none of this was driven by Joe Biden's policies, that this was in part a pretty predictable seasonal increase in migrants at the border, but it is also the result of a whole bunch of people who couldn't come in 2020 now sort of making a push to the border during the time of the year in which you traditionally have a lot of people showing up.
Oh, it's the weather. It's like the cherry blossoms in D.C. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Let's ask somebody who's just written a piece that says quite something different. The title, yes, it's a Joe Biden-created crisis. He is, of course, the Deputy Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security, now Senior Fellow with the conservative mothership. We love the Heritage Foundation. Ken Cuccinelli, welcome back to America First.
Good to be with you, Seb.
So, is it a crisis? And if it is, who's responsible, Ken?
Yeah, not only is it a crisis, it was both predictable and predicted as a crisis. I love the senator's comment, well, these people couldn't get in under Trump, so they're coming now. Well, that's exactly the problem. And they were virtually invited in. When was the last time you saw mass numbers of illegal immigrants showing up at the T-shirt at the border in the president's T-shirts?
And I don't remember a "Let Me In" Trump T-shirt. Well, you were there. You were right at the top at DHS. Did it exist back then?
That guy went out of business. Nobody bought those.
All right, let's get serious. We had Mark Morgan on the show 2 days ago, your former colleague, now also at Heritage. I asked him bluntly, have you seen anything like this in your 34 years in service? And he said, no, it's never been that bad. Do you concur with Mark?
Yeah, and even their own folks are saying, they want to say it's not a crisis, but it's the worst it's been in 20 years. And that's Mayorkas, who is more aggressively misstating the language associated with the problem at the border, the crisis at the border, than anybody else, even in the White House. And even he says it's worse than it's been in 20 years. That's pretty bad.
Now, Mayorkas seems to be driven, and Ken, you're the expert, you were right there at DHS, he seems to be driven by this idea that we want as many as possible. That first statement he made where, we're not saying we don't want you to come, illegal immigrants, just don't come now because we haven't got the mints on the pillows and we're still fluffing up the duvet. Is that... What is the logic here, Ken? I mean, when you look at the suffering with the children, the women...
There's no logic to that. That's not about logic. That is not for them. It is for consumption by the American audience. That's it. It's because they have to say something. That's what they say. I mean, Democrat Congressman Cuellar, and I imagine you might have talked about this, has interviewed some of these folks who've come across the border. And universally, they say because they heard Joe Biden say, come on in. And when he asked them, how many of you heard Joe Biden say, don't come now and stay home? No hands go up. So, they're talking differently in this country to the domestic audience than they are to the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is getting the message. There hasn't been 100,000 people in a February in 15 years. So that is not just because the weather got nice, as the senator suggested. It is because every program that we put in place to deter and then deal with illegal immigration has been ripped out at the roots. They talk about the most offensive lie they tell is, well, we inherited this broken system.
Yeah.
Within the first week, they tore up a dozen international agreements that we had established through hard work and the president's leadership with Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and they were working. They were working. We got more cooperation out of those 4 countries under President Trump than we ever have in history at fighting illegal immigration. And
He's deputy. Sorry, we're going to continue. He's going to stay on with us graciously for one more segment. Former Deputy Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security under the Trump administration, now with the Heritage Foundation, heritage.org. Joined today, he's Ken Cuccinelli. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First on the Salem Radio Network. Sadly, we're living under a Biden-Harris administration. What does it mean for your finances? More debt? More regulation, more money printing, less growth, and higher taxes. The importance of owning physical gold and silver has never been greater. Call the veteran-owned Midas Gold Group today to get their guide to owning bullion and coins. Call 480-360-3000 or go to MidasGoldGroup.com.
So this increase has been consequential. But the vice president's agreed, among the multiple other things that have her leading, and I appreciate it, agreed to lead our diplomatic effort and work with those nations to accept the returnees and enhance migration enforcement at their borders. We're already talking with Mexico about that. She's already done that.
Kamala Harris is in charge. That doesn't make me feel any safer when it comes to security on the southern border. How can you make a difference? You've already made such a difference. We are $1,000 away from hitting our target to feed as many of the children in our hemisphere who are being given into the hands, the clutches of the cartels and the smugglers. Food for the Poor is feeding 1 million mouths a day in more than a dozen countries. You can make a difference right now, and the need is urgent. Angela Loma, the Vice President of Food for the Poor, sends this message.
Every one of those little children who are starving have grandparents who think they're the most beautiful children and the most intelligent children in the world. We have to do something about this situation. We have to do it, not tomorrow, not 2 days later, because life will get in the way and we'll forget. We have to do it now.
You've raised $39,000 in just a couple of weeks. Let's make this $1,000 Thursday and hit our goal. Will you do it today? Just $37 once will feed one of these children for 6 months. $111 feeds 3 children for 6 months, and it puts the pressure off their parents. And at the end of the day, no child should suffer anywhere. Make a difference. Be a modern missionary, a guardian angel. Call Food for the Poor at 855-330-HOPE. That's 855-330-4673. Or just go to my website, sebgorka.com. That's SEBGORKA, sebgorka.com, and click on the Food for the Poor banner right at the top of the page. We are back with former Virginia Attorney General, now Senior Fellow with the redoubtable Heritage Foundation, as well as former Deputy Secretary for DHS in the Trump administration, Ken Cuccinelli. Your reaction, are you reassured now that cackling Kamala is in charge of the border?
Well, I don't really feel like anything's going to be any different, but it's one more piece of evidence of just what a crisis it is. When President Trump asked Vice President Pence to manage the coronavirus response, it wasn't because it wasn't a crisis. It was because it was a crisis. And when Obama asked Joe Biden to deal with the situation at the border, it wasn't because it wasn't a crisis. It was because it was a crisis. So it's just one more signal that they're overwhelmed, unprepared. They've ripped out all of these well thought out and difficult to put together programs that we built in the Trump administration, and they had no alternative. They had no other plan. But keep in mind, Seb, they want all these illegals in this country. It's part of a longer-term play for the left for their votes. That's why you're seeing amnesty bills, and it's why you're seeing a voting bill that sweeps in illegal immigrants onto the voting rolls of every state in this country.
Right. So at the end of the day, you have to ask why they're doing it. They could have believed it was humanitarian, but when you see the suffering, the 500 children a day, the more than 100 people in detention facilities, this has nothing to do with caring for illegal aliens. It's about politics. It's about power. Ken, let's live in a crazy theoretical world for a moment. Say that the crisis gets so bad, that even the Democrats realize it's out of control, it's going to hurt them politically, it may even hurt them in the polls next year. What needs to be done? You were right there. You're Deputy Secretary. You've been an AG. What needs to be done first to stop the suffering and secure America? What would your list of the first couple of actions be to get things, it's not going to go back to normal, but to lessen the suffering and heighten our security, Ken?
So if you're in the Biden administration, you have to come out and say, we are going to start deporting people. We're going to start deporting.
Hang on, we lost you there for a second. So we lost you there for a second. So first thing is the Biden administration would have to use the word deportation, correct?
Correct.
Okay, carry on.
Yeah, they've got to establish and then follow through, because actions speak louder than words, with deportations on a large scale of all of these target audiences. That doesn't just mean returning Mexicans across the border. It means flying Guatemalans, Hondurans, and El Salvadorans back home too in significant numbers, and telling them you're going to do it, and then actually doing it, and letting people follow along, by which I mean press reporters follow along while you're doing it, because the message will not otherwise get through. The message that is very thoroughly ingrained now that they have to undo is that Joe Biden will let anybody in for any reason, and there are no limits. And they have to undo that. And they have dug themselves a very deep hole in that regard, and it's doing a lot of damage along the border. When you have Democrats along the border criticizing the administration, you know it's pretty bad, and they've been there for weeks.
No, absolutely. And if what you said in the last segment is correct, they have to rebuild all those relationships, which were torn apart with those countries when they came in. So first they have to restore the trust with our southerly neighbors before they can even do that, correct?
That's correct. And the president of Mexico is calling Biden the immigration president. You know, you can't make this stuff up. And AMLO, their president, is a left-winger. I mean, he is not, you know, from the Trump world, like, say, the president of Brazil is. He's from the same ideological space as Biden, and he is pointing to Biden repeatedly in the last few weeks and saying he is the reason they're all coming. And you can see interview after interview with illegals. Why are you coming now? Because Biden's here. What, did you try to come under Trump? No. Why would I bother? You know, that kind of comment.
Yeah, let me. I'm so glad you mentioned that. We'll end on this. Let's go straight to the source. This is from Brandon Darby, the border expert at Breitbart. We'll post this article right now. This is a direct quote from AMLO, as he goes, the left-wing president of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who said the following: expectations were created that with the government of President Biden, there would be better treatment of migrants, and this has caused Central American migrants and also from our country wanting to cross the border, thinking that it is easier to do so. That's how you create a crisis. We've been talking to Ken Cuccinelli with the Heritage Foundation. Follow him now, Ken Cuccinelli, former Deputy Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security and former Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First on the Salem Radio Network, coming to you from the ReliefFactor.com studios.